So, welcome again to Monk Bruce Audio with me, Ramanus Kashyap. And today I have this little fella in my lap because he also wants to talk about an IEM that fancies him as well as it fancies me. And I've spent enough time with this IEM because this just didn't want to let go of from my ears. And the way that I discovered certain things across certain tracks with this IEM, it had surprised us. I mean, us as in him and I. So, without further ado, let me introduce this IEM to you. Uh, the Tanchjim Fola, which, in my opinion, is Tanchjim's all-time best IEM made till date. So let's kick back, hydrate ourselves well, and let me ask him as well what his opinion is on the Fola and let you guys know about it. So let's move on to the unboxing. So right here I have the package that is the Tanchjim Fola, and I have a few components out because I have been trying out stuffs. So this is the carry case that you usually get with the Tanchjim Fola, and this is the same case that came to me with the Tanchjim Force as well. So here there would be the IEMs that are here right out, and the case would also have the modular plugs that are here. This is the 3.5, and I have the type C right here, and this type C supports DSP as well. I think the Fola comes with 5-band PEQ support, so there's that. And as I slide the cover out, this would be the lid, and when I take the lid out, you will find this envelope contains the paperwork that the IEMs usually come with, and we can keep this aside. There's also QR code which you can use to install the Tanchjim app on your phone. Usually you would find the shells here, and these are the nozzles that are there, and it's an aluminum or metal screw plate. So when I lift this piece up, these two empty sections would contain the supplied TAPB and TAPB wide bore ear tips that Tanchjim has. They are also sold separately. It's the Tanchjim AP 300 APB ear tips, and I'll link the exact configuration down in my video. So here there would be the box, and just allow me to show you the ear tips once. This is my trusty ear tips case, and these are the Tanchjim TAPB narrow bore, and on the other side of my ear tips case here, these are the Tanchjim TAPB wide bore. 3 sets in SML each. So that would be the unboxing of the Tanchjim Fola. Okay, now that we have seen how the Tanchjim Fola unboxing is, it's time to know how the Tanchjim Fola sounds. And I'll give you a brief gist before I expound upon the 3 segments of my sound review, which is the lows, mids and highs. I must tell you one thing, that to my ears, the Fola performed exceptionally. Like, if I were to talk about nitpicks of this IEM, I couldn't really find a lot of nitpicks, let alone complaints. So that's the main gist of it. Let's dive deep into the entire sound of the Fola. Let's start with the lows. As usual, I have my set track list to evaluate the performance, and for the lows, I have 2 tracks. One is Mariscos by Tipper, and the second one is Limelight by Rush. So let's start with Mariscos. So in the Fola, when you hear Mariscos for the first time, the bass impact on this song can be taken 2 ways. Either it will come off too lean to your ears, or it will come off adequately punchy, adequately detailed. And it's adequate because the Fola doesn't seem to overpower itself on certain occasions, even though it has the space to do it. But mind you, for some years, and especially who want a more engaging sound through the electronic genre, the Fola is not going to be the first pick in terms of me recommending an IEM to you. So anyway, as the track progressed, um, I could find that the introductory rippling effect of the track was done in a very, very clean manner. Like, even if I were to compare it with IEMs against like the Zigat Lush or the Full P7, the Fola held itself quite well. And in fact, I preferred the Fola over the Lush and P7, at least in this section. And as the ripples converted into the whole fuzzy phasing sound, when the beats also come in, everything to my ears came off very crisp, polished, and there was nothing interfering, overshadowing, or the dominance of one element over the other on this track. Everything was rationed across in proper amounts. The perception was very nice, and the Fola, tonality wise, at least in this track, did not come off too warm or too bright. It was balanced. Although I could say that in certain moments it did tilt towards bees coming on the warmer side. Maybe it was the ear tips that I was using. I have used this IEM mainly on the Divinas Velvet narrow bores, so it could come off a bit warmer than usual. And now for the second track, Limelight. Here the Fola makes the deal sweeter, and bass here now has a very healthy presence. Side note, the cable is very tangly. So bass on this track has a very nice, smooth, polished presence. Like, notes from the bass line when they start belting out, right from when the bass guitar starts roaring in this track, they all fly out with a presence that doesn't seem to be undermined by the drums or overpower anything else in the mix. Although across movements, I could find that the way the kicks and the toms came off, they felt a bit under-seasoned, like a bit more impact and a bit more weight across their notes would have made the presentation even better. And I would say that the attack and the decay of the Fola across this is perfect. There is nothing wrong going around in both of these sectors. The decay was cut off at an adequate point. The attack had a good speed, and neither it slacked off nor did it rush. So Fola, at least in this regard, was doing a wonderful job. And when I say that, I'm repeating this word called coming off clean. So Fola is the epitome of clean for me in this budget. Like, when the drums start moving on towards the rudiments on the last part of the track, like when the track concludes, Piot has a section where he does a proper rudiment panning on the toms. I just wish that there was a bit more resonance added on the toms, but otherwise every note had a distinct element of polish in its execution. So the notes are well separated, imaging is flawless, tonality is balanced, and timbre felt a bit dry, I would say. Timbre felt a bit dry. Like I said, it could be noticed across moments when the toms would be more in focus, or when the vocals do take the limelight, as to say, on this track. So timbre there could come off a bit dry, but overall, for the most part, it was fine. So at least to the lows, the Fola has a lot of strength going in towards the mid-range. So now let's dive in deep on how the mids come off on the Fola. Okay, so now that we have seen how the lows are on the Fola, which safe to say is a very good start depending upon what years are the Folas in. So let's dive in deep on how the mid-range is. Once again, I have two tracks here to guide me through the mid-range. One is First It Give It by Queens of the Stone Age, and the second one is Lateralus by Tool. So when it comes to First It Give It, I was surprised with how energetic now the Fola seems, because in both the tracks that I used for the lows, there was a slight hint of lethargy seen on the Fola. Like, it wasn't being too energetic, like it was trying to play it too safe. But in first they give it the whole IEM changed into something very different, yet preserving its own fundamentals in what makes itself a very good IEM. So right out of the gate, guitars come off sounding quite full and it exudes a ton of energy, while note by note it has a perfect spaced execution. And adding on to it, vocals were planted right at the center. Cymbals also have their previously observed cleanliness, and although here in, at least in this track, the snare could have used some more crispness in its execution, it still was quite detailed. Because in this track, if you pay attention to the snare, it has a rapid firing succession of the notes that come off, and it's not easy for an IEM, at least in this price range, to get each of the strokes right in order. And be it the verse or be it the chorus part, the snare, at least on the Fola, sounds very, very crisp. Although it could have been crispier, because I have heard other sets in his price range which add added level of clarity to it. And mind you, this observation that I'm doing right now, it is uniform across all the three nozzles, at least on this track. So as I shift the gear towards lateralus, this track has a lot of complex rudiments in drums, and it's not an easy track to master, handle by any gear. At least sets priced lower, they do struggle across the clarity that the rudiments need to give me that whole proper engaging listening experience. But Fola was no slouch. Like, no matter what Danny Carey did across on the drums, the Fola was able to reproduce each and every note with appropriate weight, a lot of body to the notes, and every note bounced off with a lot of clarity in it, and at least better than what I perceived in the previous track. And as the track progresses, it gets better. When the breakdown comes in and Maynard starts being a bit more active on the vocal front, and you know that the bass is just about to wah out like a electric guitar, and the moment Danny does his last complex rapid firing rudiment and the bass starts wahing out, the Fola exudes the same level of good energy that I observed in the previous track. And every stroke, every roll, every other let's say unique element in this track in terms of the other part of detail was accurately reproduced and rendered by the Fola, while maintaining the texture and the gravity that the vocals needed, especially in this section. So the Fola really knows what it's doing, even on the mid-range. At least on the lows, I could say that it was a bit too safe playing, but at least here, the Fola is not playing it safe. It's taking up on all the risks. It's going toe-to-toe with most sets in its class, and I would say that it has done a better job than most sets that I've heard in this range. So can it keep the same energy going towards the highs? Let's find out that. So now that we have seen how good the lows and the mids are on the Fola, let's see if we can hit a home run through the highs. And again, through this section, I have two tracks for evaluation. One is Icarus by Patricia Barber, and the other one is Take 5 by Dave Brubeck. So coming to Icarus, right out of the bat, I could sense that the Fola was doing a wonderful job in keeping the track binded together. Like the isolation of the instruments that are there in Icarus on one side, I was amazed with how well emulsified Patricia's lush, gorgeous texture in the vocals while playing tango with the guitars and the percussion that the track has. And the entire sound was coming off without any sibilance or fatigue. And in fact, even if I were to compare the Fola with other IEMs from Tanchjim with the same driver and kind of the similar tuning in the Origin and Nora, Fola makes both IEMs sound very sibilant, especially the Origin, and it also comes off quite thinner in comparison. So keeping that part aside, let's move on more towards the track. So My impression improves further as the guitar intertwines with the percussion, maintaining a very, I would say, not very, I would say perfect, maintaining a perfect timbre. And when Patricia bells out her straight notes sustain, which is a wonderful part because you could hear the percussion and the drums going on and the vocals on the other side, and the piano and the guitar just right in the center underneath her vocals. The entire track had a level of cohesion that you cannot actually hear in most sets in this price range. And Fola sprints across the entire section without a single wobble, and there was no pierce, there was no fatigue, there was no sibilance. It's just oozing quality over and over again. And even in take 5, the pianos that come off in the beginning of the track, they bounce across in a very lighty, fun-hearted way. And the cymbals take and the snare take their position to welcome the horns. Once again, the Fola exudes how good the timbre is, while maintaining the tonality as balanced as it can get, which allowed me to enjoy this track in a way that I seldom have enjoyed with sets in this price range. And the way that the horns came off and the rest of the track ensued, there was a level of detail that was improved upon by leagues by this IEM. And the real delight comes in from the 2-minute 30-second mark on this track, where the main focus is on the drums, because the way the imaging on the take on this track particularly happens is that at one point the channel splits up into 2 distinct sides, and the Fola did a wonderful job in keeping up with it. Because what happens is that sometimes, especially on this track, I have heard that when the split happens, the IEMs just lose all composure and the imaging capabilities are just severely hampered. But the Fola doesn't let anything happen on that. So from the 2-minute 30-second mark, where the main focus is on the drums, both the snare and the floor toms have a phenomenal perception. Let it be the note weight, let it be the separation between the notes, let it be the resonance that the floor toms especially have on this track. And when the kicks come in from time to time, it was as crisp as French fries double fried. And my entire conclusion is that the Fola, no matter what you throw at this IEM, regardless of genre, regardless of artist, regardless of the elements in the track, be it a philharmonic orchestra piece or a very busy prog metal track, the Fola will handle it just like a breeze. So that's my impression on how the Fola sounds. Let me just give you a brief rundown on how the nozzles are on this IEM. Okay, so now that we have seen how the sound is, allow me to talk about how the nozzles are on this IEM. So IEMs from Tanchjim, like the Fission, Origin, and now the Fola, they come with interchangeable nozzles, and there are 3 of them. I found the Origin that was loaned to me by my friend with the S nozzle, and also the Fola right out of the box comes with the S nozzle as well. Apart from that, there are the D and L nozzles, which the per the official specs come off as something that enhances the bass and something that lets the IEM be brighter overall respectively. So when I heard one track, I have chosen Icarus to be the base of my impressions on the nozzles of the Fola. So on the D nozzle, the mid-range actually sounded more alive, if that's the perfect way to describe it. And if I'm wrong, apologies, but that's the best way I can come up with. So the mid-range gained even more life than before, and the bass impact was more pronounced. Elements like drums, percussion, cymbals felt better in terms of their note weight and body, while tonality felt considerably warmer and compared to the S nozzle as well. Although it really didn't adversely overpower the mix, but it was having a good tinge of warmth in terms of tonality. And I couldn't observe any changes to stage, imaging, or timbre, but in bits and pieces versus the S, this is a better one solely for a stronger and larger bass impact if you need that. Because remember when I told in the first part of the low section that the base on the Fola can come off two ways. Either it will come off too lean or it will come off perfect for you. So if you feel that the base on the Fola can be too lean, besides ear tip rolling, you could also try switching to the D nozzle. Now let's come to the L nozzle. And honestly, there was not a lot of very meaningful differences between the S and L. I could find that the tonality that I had observed in D, that is completely gone, and even when compared to the S, the L was actually sounding slightly brighter. And guitars and cymbals especially, they had a unique level of shimmer and sparkle to them, as well as a mild bump in terms of detail, at least in those sectors. Uh, Overall clarity remained unchanged. No, see, this is what happens when you try to overcomplicate an IEM. That I often run down on things to comment on, especially in terms of IEM that do come with interchangeable nozzles that provide only subtle changes to the overall sound signature. So as much as I had to speak about the D, there is not a lot that I can say about the L. And in my opinion, the Fola could have come off with only the D and the S nozzles. The L was actually unnecessary. At least that's what my opinion is. So that's been the majority of my opinion on the Fola. Let's conclude the review on a very good note. So here's the concluding part of this review, and I would like to start this segment with just a quick question. What's there to not like in the Fola? It's modular, it comes with interchangeable nozzles, it's got a metal build, it doesn't have any fit or pressure issues. With the Type-C port, it supports DSP capabilities via the app, and overall it sounds phenomenal, especially for the price. And even if I were to compare it with IEMs from the same brand, mainly the Nora, Fission, Origin and Force, I would say that the Fola beats all of them by a considerable margin, especially the Force. It was a massive disappointment of an IEM that I'd reviewed. I'm linking the link to the Force review now. So even compared with the Force, the Fola is a much better IEM. The perceived thinness of the notes in inconsistent quantities in the Nora and the Fission were mitigated to the good extent by the Fola. Although the presence of bass as well as a bump in perceived stage was observed in the Fission, the Fola takes everything out of the equation on a very good note. And let's just say that Tanchjim did a very good job overall with the Fola, and that's why it's their best IEM till date, at least to my ears. When I compare it with non-Tanchjim IEMs, most notably the P7 and the Zigat Lush, because the FR graph has a similar perception, at least to the lows and the mids, I think you won't be going wrong with either of them. It only depends on what you want. If you want detail, separation, and relatively safe tuning, the Fola is my pick. If you want a stronger, more pronounced impact with a fun, energetic sound perception comparatively, if you can deal with the minor sibilance that is observed, then the P7 is my pick. And if you want an overall laid-back set where you don't want the most detail, where you don't want the best-in-class separation, but overall a very inoffensive, safe sound, which kind of does everything in bits and pieces, then the Lush would be my pick. But if you are picking up the Lush, please keep this in mind that batches of the Zigat Lush have driver flex, and the unit that I personally own also has driver flex. So keep that in mind. All said and done, the most important questions of this review: I would buy the Fola at retail and at the used market blindly. Yes, it's that good. End of the review. So let me see what else do I have to opine on in the next chapter in this wonderful saga that I'm keeping. And stay hydrated, be well, see you in my next review. Bye-bye.